At 3:20 on the afternoon of January 22, 1879, Private Henry Hook stood in the doorway of a burning hospital watching 600 Zulu warriors cross the Bashee River 400 yards away. 26 years old, former Monmouthshire laborer, trained for parade ground drill and volley fire. The British Army had not taught him how to hold a building with 11 men against an enemy that fought with spears at arm's length. Hook had enlisted in 1877 after his farm failed. 2 years of service, 2 disciplinary charges for drunkenness on duty. He was not a marksman. He was not an officer. He had fired his Martini-Henry rifle exactly 47 times before arriving in Natal Province, all of them at paper targets on ranges where the targets did not move and did not shoot back. The Martini-Henry weighed 9 pounds 6 ounces, breech-loading, single shot, .577 caliber. Effective range 450 yards with the latter sight raised. The weapon had been designed for volley fire at long distance, massed ranks of infantry putting lead, downrange at European enemies who advanced in formation. The Zulus did not advance in formation. They carried assegais, stabbing spears with 2-foot blades designed for combat at arm's length. Hook's rifle gave him 1 shot before a warrior could cover 30 yards. After that, he had a 22-inch bayonet and whatever speed his hands possessed. The hospital was a converted mission station. Stone walls 18 inches thick, thatch roof, 6 rooms connected by interior doorways, small windows 2 feet wide, positioned 5 feet above ground level. Inside were 30 sick and wounded soldiers, most of them immobile. Typhoid, dysentery, battlefield injuries from skirmishes along the Buffalo River. Lieutenant Bromhead had assessed the building as indefensible and ordered evacuation, but half the patients could not walk, and the Zulus were already crossing the river. Hook and 10 others had been assigned to defend the hospital. Private John Williams, a former bricklayer from Birmingham. Private William Jones, a farmer's son from Herefordshire. Private Robert Jones, no relation, a coal miner from Monmouthshire. Private David Jenkins, another miner. Privates Horrigan, Connolly, Cole, Adams, Desmond Waters, and Nicholas all received the same order. Hold the building. Protect the patients. Buy time for the main garrison to fortify the supply depot 100 yards east. The order had been given at 3:15 p.m. That morning, 10 miles north at Isandlwana, 1,300 British soldiers had been killed in 3 hours. Survivors reported that the Zulus did not take prisoners. They reported that assegai blades could punch through uniform jackets and pierce ribs from the front. They reported warriors who continued fighting with gunshot wounds that should have been fatal. Hook had 70 rounds of ammunition in his pouches, 1 round loaded in the chamber, 69 in reserve. The Martini-Henry could fire 10 rounds per minute if the shooter worked the lever smoothly and did not aim carefully. Hook had never fired more than 8 rounds in a minute during training. The brass cartridges became hot after sustained fire. The rifle barrel became too hot to touch after 40 rounds. Hook had never fired 40 rounds consecutively. He did not know if the weapon could sustain that rate without jamming. Hook had 70 rounds of ammunition, 1 bayonet, and a building full of men who could not walk. The Zulus had numbers, speed, and 8 hours of daylight left. At 4:36 p.m., the first Zulu warrior reached the hospital's north wall. Hook fired from 15 feet. The Martini-Henry kicked into his shoulder. The .577 caliber round struck the warrior center mass. He dropped. Hook worked the lever, ejected the spent cartridge, chambered another round. The empty brass hit the stone floor with a metallic ping. Hook had 69 rounds left. The hospital had 6 rooms. Each room held 4 to 6 patients on cots or lying on blankets spread across the floor. Hook and Williams took the northwest room. The Jones cousins took the northeast. Jenkins and Horrigan defended the center rooms. The remaining 5 soldiers spread across the south-facing chambers. Each window became a firing position. Each doorway became a choke point. The Zulus did not retreat after the first volley. European infantry would fall back, regroup, advance again under covering fire. The Zulu warriors kept coming. They ran through casualties, stepped over bodies, reached the windows within 90 seconds of the first shots. Hook fired again at 4:38 p.m. A warrior 12 feet from his window fell backward. Hook chambered another round. A third warrior appeared at the window opening, thrust an assegai through the gap. Hook stepped left. The blade missed his chest by 6 inches. He drove his bayonet forward. The warrior fell. At 4:41 p.m., Hook had fired 8 rounds. 3 warriors lay dead outside his window. The Martini-Henry barrel was warm to the touch. Hook's hands moved mechanically. Lever down, cartridge ejects, lever up, new round chambers, aim, fire. The rhythm became automatic. Aim was secondary to volume. The warriors came too fast for careful shot placement. Williams fired from the opposite window. Hook heard the sharp crack of the Martini-Henry, the metallic click of the lever, another crack. The room filled with gun smoke. The small windows did not ventilate well. Hook's eyes watered. He kept firing. At 5:47 p.m., the roof caught fire. Hook saw flames spreading across the thatch from the northeast corner. The Zulus had used fire arrows, burning cloth wrapped around arrow shafts launched from 60 yards out. The thatch was dry. The fire spread fast. Smoke filled the north rooms first. Hook and Williams grabbed patients, dragged them toward the interior doorway. Private Waters appeared from the center room with a pickaxe. He began breaking through the interior wall, creating a larger passage for moving wounded men who could not fit through the doorway. The stone wall was 18 inches thick. Waters swung the pickaxe. Chunks of mortar and stone fell away. By 6:15 p.m., Hook had moved 5 patients into the center room. The fire had consumed half the roof. Burning thatch fell into the northwest room. Hook's ammunition pouches held 43 rounds. He had fired 27 shots in 99 minutes. The Martini-Henry barrel was too hot to touch with bare skin. At 6:30 p.m., warriors broke through the north wall where the fire had weakened the structure. Hook fell back to the center room. Jenkins and Horrigan were already there, defending the interior doorways. 6 British soldiers remained. 4 rooms had been abandoned. The Zulus owned the north half of the hospital. At 6:41 p.m., Corporal William Allen made the decision that would save them. He ordered the remaining men out of the hospital and into the yard. Not a retreat. A bayonet square. The bayonet square was not a formal British Army tactic. No manual described it. No drill sergeant had taught it. The formation existed in theory. Infantry squares were standard against cavalry, but squares required 50 men minimum, preferably 200. Allen had 11 soldiers, 4 of them wounded. He had 30 seconds to create a formation before the Zulus realized the hospital was abandoned. Allen shouted orders. The men formed a tight rectangle in the hospital yard, 3 men per side, 2 at the ends, shoulders touching, bayonets pointed outward, rifles held at hip level, no firing, just stabbing. The formation was small enough that each man could feel the soldier beside him breathing. The tactical logic was simple. The Zulus could not encircle a moving formation. They could not use numbers against a hedgehog. A warrior who charged the square met 4 bayonets instead of 1. A warrior who grabbed a rifle found another soldier's bayonet in his ribs. At 6:47 p.m., 40 warriors charged the square from the east. The front rank thrust bayonets forward. The rear rank reloaded rifles. Hook stood at the southeast corner, partnered with Williams. A warrior grabbed Hook's rifle barrel with both hands, tried to pull the weapon away. Hook twisted left, drove his boot into the warrior's knee, yanked the rifle back. Williams stepped forward and bayoneted the warrior from the side. The man fell. The formation held. Allen ordered the square to move. They shuffled toward the main defensive position, a barricade made of biscuit boxes and mealie bags 60 yards away. The square moved at 20 yards per minute while fighting. Shoulders stayed together. Feet moved in small steps. The formation advanced like a single organism. At 7:03 p.m., warriors attacked from 2 sides simultaneously. Hook thrust his bayonet into a warrior's chest, pulled it free, turned right, blocked an assegai with his rifle stock. Williams fired once, the only shot in 16 minutes. The warrior dropped. Hook chambered another. Round but did not fire. Ammunition was for emergencies only. Private Horrigan took an assegai to the left thigh at 7:09 p.m. The blade cut through his trouser leg and into muscle. Horrigan made no sound. He stayed standing, kept his position in the formation, continued thrusting his bayonet when warriors came close. The square had covered 35 yards in 18 minutes. 25 yards remained to the barricade. Hook could see British soldiers behind the biscuit boxes firing over the wall at Zulu warriors approaching from the west. At 7:22 p.m., Hook saw the problem. Between the square and the barricade, 80 Zulu warriors were forming their own line. The British would have to go through them. Allen had 3 options: stop and fight the 80 warriors blocking their path. The square would be surrounded and overrun within minutes. Break formation and run for the barricade. The wounded would be left behind, and the Zulus would cut down scattered soldiers. Or go through, maintain the square, keep moving, and trust 11 bayonets could penetrate a Zulu line 80 men deep. Allen chose the third option. At 7:31 p.m., he ordered the square to advance directly into the Zulu formation. The square increased speed. From shuffle to march pace. Shoulders stayed pressed together. Hook felt Williams beside him, felt the man's breathing change as they accelerated. The distance closed. 25 yards became 15, then 10. The Zulu line held position. Hook could see individual faces now, warriors in their 20s and 30s, some with white oxtail ceremonial regalia, others in simple loincloths. They carried oval shields made of cowhide, assegais held ready for thrusting. British NCOs began, shouting cadence, left, right, left, right. Parade ground discipline under combat conditions. The rhythm steadied the formation. Hook matched his steps to the count. At 7:33 p.m., the square hit the Zulu line at 5 yards. Bayonets led. The front rank thrust forward. Warriors fell back or fell down. The second rank thrust into the gap. The square pushed forward 2 yards. Hook could smell blood and sweat. He could hear breathing, grunting, the wet sound of steel entering flesh. A warrior grabbed his rifle barrel. Hook pulled the trigger. The Martini-Henry fired at point-blank range. The warrior's chest exploded. Hook worked the lever, chambered another round, thrust the bayonet into another warrior pressing from the right. The Zulu line began to split, not breaking, just separating to avoid the concentrated bayonet point. The square functioned like a wedge, dividing the formation rather than fighting through it. Warriors moved left and right to avoid being trampled. The British kept pushing forward. Hook fired 6 rounds in 40 seconds, clearing warriors who grabbed rifles from the front rank. His ammunition count dropped to 31 rounds. The Martini-Henry barrel burned his left hand when he adjusted his grip. He ignored the pain. Halfway through the Zulu line, the square was surrounded on all sides. Warriors pressed from front, back, left, and right. The formation compressed. Hook's shoulders were crushed against Williams on one side and Jenkins on the other. He could barely move his arms to thrust. Private Jenkins stumbled. His boot caught on a body. He started to fall forward. Hook grabbed Jenkins' jacket with his left hand, yanked him upright. Williams steadied Jenkins from the other side. The formation held. No gaps appeared. At 7:47 p.m., the square broke through the Zulu line and reached the barricade. 11 men collapsed behind the biscuit boxes, reloaded, prepared for the next assault. 16 minutes to cover 25 yards. 11 men against 80. 0 men left behind. The bayonet square had reached the main defensive line, but the battle was not finished. Hook checked his ammunition. 31 rounds remaining. The Martini-Henry rifle became too hot to touch after 40 rounds of sustained fire. Hook had fired 39 rounds. The metal barrel radiated heat into the night air. If the Zulus attacked again before the rifle cooled, he would have to fight with the bayonet alone. The defensive position consisted of biscuit boxes, stacked 4 feet high, forming a wall around a 30-yard perimeter. 100 British soldiers held the line. Hook's section included the original 10 survivors from the hospital. They were assigned a 15-yard stretch of wall on the south side. Night fighting began at 9:15 p.m. The Zulus attacked in darkness. Hook could not see targets beyond 20 feet. He fought by sound and muzzle flash. When he heard movement at the wall, he aimed toward the noise and waited for shapes to appear against the stars. Officers ordered fire on command only. Ammunition had to last until dawn. Hook could not waste rounds on shadows. At 9:47 p.m., warriors rushed the barricade directly in front of Hook's position. He fired 8 rounds in 90 seconds. He estimated 3 kills, but could not confirm in the darkness. Bodies fell. He did not know if they were dead or wounded or retreating. By 10:15 p.m., the rifle barrel was too hot. Hook tried to reload and burned his palm on the metal. He poured water from his canteen onto the barrel. Steam rose into the night air. The metal cooled enough to handle. He loaded another round. At midnight, Hook had 18 rounds left. Williams had 12. The other soldiers reported similar counts. If the Zulus attacked at dawn in the same numbers as dusk, the ammunition would not last. The darkness made estimating enemy strength impossible. Hook could hear voices in the valley below, hundreds of warriors, maybe thousands. He could see campfires a quarter mile away. The Zulus had not withdrawn. They were regrouping. At 1:23 a.m., Ott's warrior climbed over the barricade 3 feet from Hook's position. Hook saw the silhouette against the stars, dropped his rifle, grabbed the man's shield with both hands, pulled him forward over the wall. The warrior fell into the compound. Hook picked up his rifle, drove the bayonet down into the man's chest, 8 seconds from appearance to death. The fire slackened at 3:30 a.m. The Zulu voices grew distant. Hook could hear warriors moving away from the perimeter, back toward the valley. At 4 a.m., Hook counted his remaining ammunition, 11 rounds from the original 70. Around him, the other survivors reported similar numbers. Jenkins had 9 rounds, Williams had 7, Allen had 14. Of the original 11 men from the Bayonet Square, 9 were still alive. Connolly and Horrigan had died during the night attacks. 7 men were wounded, including Hook, who had taken an assegai cut across his left forearm at some point he could not remember. At 4:47 a.m., the sun rose over the Oscarburg Heights. Hook could see the valley floor. The Zulus were gone. 4,000 warriors had withdrawn during the night. The mission station still stood. Hook stood on the hospital ruins and counted bodies. The Zulus had removed most of their dead during the night, but British estimates later put enemy casualties at over 400 killed. Hook had fired 59 rounds. He could confirm 7 kills with certainty, probably more. The bayonet on his Martini-Henry was bent 15 degrees from impact. The rifle barrel had a heat blister near the breech where metal had expanded under sustained fire. The final count showed 17 British soldiers dead, 15 wounded from the total garrison of 139 men. But from the hospital square, only 2 had died, 7 were wounded, and 2 walked away untouched. Hook and Allen had survived 12 hours without serious injury. Queen Victoria awarded 11 Victoria Crosses for the defense of Rorke's Drift, the most ever given for a single action. Hook received his citation in 1879. The text read, "For gallant conduct at the defense of Rorke's Drift on the occasion of the attack by the Zulus when he was engaged with Private Williams in the defense of the hospital, where, for more than an hour, they held the enemy at bay with only 2 rifles. Allen, Williams, both Jones' cousins, and Jenkins also received the medal." Military analysts studied the Bayonet Square in the years following the battle. The formation appeared in after-action reports as an example of small unit tactics under overwhelming odds. Sandhurst instructors used Rorke's Drift as a case study in defensive operations. The square that Allen formed became doctrine, at least in theory. Hook was discharged from the Army in 1880. He married, worked as a cloakroom attendant at the British Museum in London, and lived quietly until his death in 1905 at age 52. He rarely spoke about Rorke's Drift. When asked, he would say only that he had done his duty. His Martini-Henry rifle, serial number 3303, was donated to the Regimental Museum in Brecon, Wales. The weapon sits in a glass display case with the bent bayonet still attached. The heat blister on the barrel remains, visible. Visitors can see the physical evidence of sustained fire, the metal stress of a weapon pushed beyond its designed limits. The mission station at Rorke's Drift was restored in the 1970s. The battlefield became a heritage site. More than 200 visitors walked the grounds daily, standing where Hook stood, looking across the valley, where 4,000 Zulu warriors assembled on the afternoon of January 22, 1879. The 1964 film Zulu brought the battle to popular attention. Michael Caine played Lieutenant Bromhead. The Bayonet Square appears in the final act, 11 men moving through impossible odds. The bayonet that Hook used is bent from bone and shield impact. The metal deformed under force but did not break. That bayonet covered 25 yards in 16 minutes, held by 11 men who refused to separate, refused to run, refused to break formation. If this story moved you the way it moved us, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. These men deserve to be remembered, and you're helping make that happen.